Well, good morning and welcome to our live video today here at Concordia Technology Solutions. My name is Peter Frank and I will be your host for today, as I have been for many weeks in a row now. So every week on Thursdays at this time, we have a live interview with one of our blog authors to talk about different ways to utilize technology in the church. And we've covered a wide range of topics, some very theoretical, some very practical. We're back into the practical mode today, and I'm very excited to talk about this topic of Evernote. So joining me today is Lora Horn, coming from San Diego, California. Laura's got a lot of experience with digital media and working with churches, and today we're going to talk about this productivity app and how to get organized using Evernote. So Laura, how are you doing today?
Great.
Thanks for joining us again. Doing well. It's been a crazy day, a crazy week. I'm excited to talk about organization. That's the one thing that when I get stressed, having better organization, getting organized, at least knowing everything that's out there as opposed to having this, even if it's just mental chaos. I like having everything nice and neat and structured, like a spreadsheet. That's how my mind works. So we're going to talk about Evernote today. And as we were talking before we went live, I tried out Evernote several years ago, and it didn't fit my workflow. But I know several people here who use it, and I know many people in the congregation who use it. I attended a session led by a pastor at a Wells conference several years back, and just how he utilized Evernote. And it seems like just such a powerful tool. And I'm excited to hear from you today about that. But before we get in there, let's talk a little bit about your blog post, because you start the blog post really describing a situation of just different, information that is tracked in a church office. And historically, and even still today, it often is on paper. But that can be kind of an organization struggle, if you will, if not worse than that. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges of the types of information that a church stores, why paper might be a problem, and maybe why paper might not be the best solution?
Well, the problem with paper is even if you store it well, usually only one or two people have access to the information easily. But there's so many things that go through a church office, whether it's product samples that get mailed, or descriptions for software that would help, or you need to have access to tax ID numbers and documents, and then you have things coming from the pastor or the music director or the Sunday school. And so keeping track of that, sometimes the file cabinet just isn't the answer. And or it's full and it's time to get another one, or things just end up getting stored all over a desk, or in trays, or just various places. And it's just so easy to lose it and to forget about things and just have them kind of drift off into nowhere.
So talk about some of the possible solutions that have been attempted before we dig into Evernote. What are some ways of getting organized in a church office? Oops, it looks like we just lost Laura. We've had these connection issues with our guests, and it doesn't matter who the guest is, it seems like we tend to lose connection during the live interview. So we're working to figure that out. Still don't have a solution. So I thank you, for those of you who tune in regularly, for your patience with us as we figure this out. But we'll get Laura back in just a second. There she is. Sorry about that, Laura. I was asking, what are some possible solutions that churches have tried or are presently trying or might try before we get into the Evernote as a solution? But what are some of the potential options?
Well, I mentioned the file cabinet. That tends to be a standard one. I mean, you can go into a church office and see 4 or 5 or 6 of them. Also, scanning things and putting them into storing them on the computer, Word documents, spreadsheets, things like that. But sometimes you don't end up knowing where they've gone, or they end up disappearing into oblivion. Or you just forget about them because you don't check out that file.
Sure. If it's out of sight, it's kind of out of mind. Well,
it is. And new things are coming.
Absolutely. There's never a shortage of intake within the church of new information. So let's
Yeah.
talk about Evernote. For those in our audience who don't know what Evernote is or what it does, can you give us a brief overview about what kind of software it is, how you access it, and really what its purpose is?
Evernote is what they call a software as a service, which means that you subscribe to it. With Evernote, that only means you're doing that with a premium level because it's free and it's free to use on up to 3 devices. So, um, well, all it is that it is a means to put information and store it. And its base is a notebook, which is something that all of us are familiar with, the concept of putting stuff into notebooks. And you can create several different notebooks. But the nice thing about Evernote is it doesn't just have to be things that are normally paper. Evernote is able to store pictures. Evernote's able to store video, and it's also able to store PDFs and other kinds of documents.
So it really
So,
it's like a filing cabinet for everything, or like you said, a notebook.
yes,
When did you first discover its usefulness? When did you first start using it?
I started using it a couple of years ago, and like you, I've gone back and forth with whether or not it's actually fitting my needs. Um, Probably started coming back into it when I was on an advertising committee for my church, and we decided to use that as a means to communicate. Um, because that's also something that Evernote will do is that you can share the documents and you can chat and have comments about them. So it not only leaves that in one place like the office, it means that you can share it with others.
That's really fascinating because that's one of the key challenges you mentioned before with paper is that once it's tangible, once it's here, that means it's not over there, it's not with other people, it's only where it is, and so it can only be so useful. But you can have this kind of collaboration with Evernote. Is there privacy
Right.
with it? If you don't want other people to see it, are you able to set it so that some people see some things and not others?
Oh yes, absolutely. Um, you only tell Evernote, I want to share this with Heather, with the pastor, with different people. So if you haven't set it to share, it doesn't share.
Okay, good. Because I know, especially within like pastors' notes, that's a real concern is the privacy aspect of it, the confidential conversations. So let's talk about that. In your blog post, you outline a number of different uses. Let's first talk about the different uses that pastors can have with Evernote. I know you've come up with a number of ideas and kind of compiled some ideas from other sources. Can you walk us through some of these and maybe highlight your favorite ones? Because I know you obviously have a lot of experience with pastors. What would be some of your favorite ideas for pastors?
My my husband's office manager emailed me saying, "Hey, that was a great article. Can you get my pastor to use Evernote?" um, but yeah, I mean, Evernote. One of the beauties of it is it's across 3 different devices and more if you go for a premium version. But so when you save something or you see something or you take a picture of something, um, it's right there. So if a pastor has a thought about a sermon, he can go to Evernote and he can type it in, and then later when he's at his office, he can bring it up on his computer. If he's driving and he remembers, I need to do this, when he gets to a light, he can, press play because Evernote will do audio. He can say something and then check it later. Um, if he has a note that he wants to share with people, he can do that. If he's making notes, and I think this is interesting, is that one of the things is that Evernote can.
Oops, we just lost Laura again. Um, we'll come back to her in just a second as soon as she reconnects. But that idea of the audio recording is really fascinating to me. I got a little worried when she said if the pastor's driving in the car, because certainly we don't want any pastor taking notes on his phone while he's in the car. But that idea of the audio recording is really interesting. Sorry, Laura, we lost you for a second there.
Okay.
You were just starting to talk about when you after Pastor being in the car taking audio notes, and then you're talking about sharing notes with others, and we lost you.
Okay. Yeah, but also like if like I said, it's Evernote works with Kindle. And so you can take if you're reading something, you can, or you've made notes or highlighted things, you can actually go to a section in Kindle, find all your notes and email them to Evernote, tag those. And so when you're doing research, no matter what you're doing, if you're taking the notes and you can tag them and then just go look at that tag later, and all of those will be there.
That's
So it's really incredibly useful for um, research projects or writing articles or or putting together a sermon or a Bible study.
That's really cool. And I think that fits all those different work styles that pastors have. Because as I talk with pastors and hear about kind of how they go about their week, preparing for Sunday services, and prepping for the sermons while doing all of the shut-in visits and working with the school and confirmation class, there's all these things that come up. This kind of fits all of those by presenting different means of information and different ways to enter it. I think that's really cool.
It really does.
If you're a pastor and you're watching this and you use Evernote, I'd love to hear how you're using it. You can just put those comments in the chat and share them with other people, because I think that'd be really valuable to find out some of the way that our pastors are using Evernote. So you mentioned, go ahead.
One of the beauties too is that different pastors work in different ways. They say organizationally, there are pilers and there are filers. And my Evernote does not look anything like in the article, because I was exploring all the options of the things Evernote can do. It can also just be a place where you just dump things, but you can go back and search them.
That's the key. Being able to search for things wherever it is, that's the real value of kind of this new digital world that we have, is that everything's indexed and you can find it. We use Slack for internal communication. I don't know how many times I use the search to say, okay, what did they say, or what was this file path or something, to go back to that. And search is just such a key part of our lives. Well, you mentioned before, and we talked a little bit about this ability to share with others, but let's talk about using Evernote as part of a tool for your church staff. So in what ways can a church staff, or even just a group of volunteers, utilize Evernote? And you mentioned that you kind of got back onto it when you were working with an advertising team.
Right. Yeah, it was really easy, because we ended up, just all of us downloaded the app, and when we need to share information, we just send it to each other, and we can tag it for, this is for our Christmas Facebook advertising campaign. This is for VBS down the line. What do you think of this? And it's something that takes a few minutes between committee meetings and everything, and we can continue moving forward and sharing information. One of the things that I think would be handy is using it as a maintenance list for your trustees, or a supply list for the office managers, or different things like that. And then also, when the office manager leaves or a person stops filling a certain position, that information on how to do that is there. It really helps set up systems so that one person can step into the shoes of another.
We talk about that often in the church with so many volunteers who have many things going on in their lives. There's a lot of those transition of authority is not the right word, but transitional leadership for different groups. That's an excellent way of using that. I didn't even think about that. That's fantastic. Good. Well, let's talk practical. What are some ways that people can get started with this? If you've never used Evernote before, what would you recommend to that person who's like, hey, this is a good idea. How do I get started?
You go to the website and you download the app. They have some tutorials. They're on the website, which are pretty handy, but it's honestly very self-explanatory. Once you sign up, on your window, it'll say, like in mine, it says Laura's Notebook. But you can create other notebooks for different sections of your life or different projects. If those projects are related, you can group them together as stacks. But, think of something that you want to save, and just, start working with a particular category and see what it does, and then branch out. One thing that I absolutely love is Evernote has a oh, what do they call them? One of those things at the top of the screen in your web browser. Um,
Shortcuts,
um,
bookmarks, or
um,
tabs?
on one second. Um, it, it
Maybe
is
is
it's
it?
well, basically
Mhm.
it's I think some an app that you can download that attaches to your thing. I'm having a 40s
Oh,
moment.
a Chrome
Um,
extension.
yes,
And
an extension, and they have those for Firefox
sure.
and for different ones, and it's called the Evernote Clipper. And so if you see something on your screen that you want to save, all you have to do is click on that. If it's a PDF that comes up, and every time once you have that, if a PDF comes up in your browser, there's going to be a little elephant in the corner that you can click on to save it to your Evernote instead of having it get lost in your download files or a directory that you're not going to be able to find it again later. But you can save audio, you can save a video, but it's just, or you can save an entire web page or take a screenshot. And it's just amazing because that's a great way to start saving information that's kind of hard to access otherwise because it's
Sure.
not on paper that you can scan. It's not a file already. But it creates one. So that's really neat.
Well, and hopefully you're not one of the people who print out web pages. I've seen that before where you get web page after web page printed out. They're not meant to be printed. And I think this is a fantastic solution on how to kind of solve that problem without printing it out. You talked
Hmm.
before about a filer or a piler. I'm a shredder. I don't like having any paper around whatsoever. Shred and recycle. But that idea of never even getting it into the print to start, you just save
Yeah,
it directly from wherever you're looking there is fantastic. Well, good.
I
Any
think it's a
final
really good.
thoughts? Any other recommendations for our audience today on how they can use Evernote or advice on how to best practices with using it?
Honestly, you had mentioned private things that a pastor does. It is saved on the cloud so that you can access it from different devices. So I don't know that I would put confidential information on there, but you can put notes to remind yourself where confidential information is. Um, so that's something that I would definitely look at as far as best practices. But it's a great tool. I mean, and not only can you use it for what's going on in the office or between boards or accessing or just having it so that people work together, then you can use it. You can open up a notebook and use it for your home things too, or for things that you need to remember for your kids, or for volunteer things that you're doing too. It doesn't have to be segmented just to work.
That
I think one of the only things we didn't address was, and that I love, is the idea that different people can email into Evernote. So if you have a document and you want to get it to the church office, you can take your notes or your document or your file and you can email it to their particular Evernote email. And you can tag it. For instance, let's say the music director says, I want to do this piece for Sunday. She can tag it with the date. And then also the pastor can say, this is the title for my sermon, and tag it with the date. And then we need these announcements, and tag it with the date. And, once everybody knows to do that, your office manager, when she goes to do the bulletin or the slides or whatever, can just go put in that tag, and all that information is right there.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's just kind of that
Yeah,
collective inbox for everybody without it being an email inbox, but a working inbox. That's really cool.
exactly.
Well, thanks again for joining us today, Laura, and sharing these ideas. And I'd love to hear our audience's ideas, or if you've thought about some of these things before, or if now you're motivated to go ahead and start using Evernote. We'll be back next week with another new topic. We'll be joined by Katie Munson, and this will get a little bit more on the theoretical side, and there's practicality to it too. We're going to be talking about how to set up your schedule to optimize your time for both practical actions, but also creativity so that you can have kind of the balance of both. So I'm excited to talk to Katie about that. I hope you join us next week. Thanks again. Have a great day.